What's up everyone, April Dunnam here. In this video I'm going to show how you can create a horizontal progress bar in PowerApps. But first, here's the intro. Let's walk through the app and take a look at how the progress bar looks and functions first. A great use case for a progress bar is if you have a really long form and you want to break it down into different smaller pieces so that your users aren't overwhelmed by too much data to enter at once. You see that we're breaking it out into 4 different sections. The current section that we're on is highlighted, and we're only showing little bits of information at a time. As you click Next, it marks the previous section that you just completed in green with a check mark and highlights the section that you're on. It looks clean and they're never overwhelmed with too much info at a time. So as you can see, we went through the whole process and the progress bar walked us all the way through that. Now let's take a look at how to implement this. For this Power App, I want that progress bar to show on a total of 4 different screens. Because I need to reuse this on multiple screens, this is a great use case for a component. Components allow you to build something once and insert that as a singular control in multiple screens or different Power Apps. So that's how I built out this progress bar. If we take a look at the Components tab in the tree view, that's where you can go to build and see existing components. You'll see I have a component called Horizontal Progress Bar. All this component consists of is a gallery. So what I've did is I've went in, inserted a vertical gallery control, and I've customized it a bit. So if we have a blank component for comparison, when you add a vertical gallery, you can see that it looks nothing like what our progress bar did. So we have to do a little bit of tweaking. For one, we'll change the layout to where it's just a title. You'll go through and delete those icons. I went in and added a circle icon instead to have that effect. Changed the size of the text a bit, and then I also changed the layout. So first let's talk about, for this component, how do we populate it with the items of the tabs for the progress bar that we want to show? Well, we need to add a custom property to our component to handle that. So if we take this component, for example, you'll see on the right hand side we have a new custom property option. So we'll want to add a new property here with a data type of table. This will allow us to pass in a table of items into this component so that we can use that in our gallery. When we create that property, we can then click on our component, click on the drop down in the properties pane, and go to that item property, and we'll see a table which I've already populated with some information. I need an ID field so I can distinguish between the different tabs, a label, so that's what will show as the text for the tab, and then a visibility toggle for true or false, so we can know whether to show or hide that tab. Now that we have that, we just need to wire up our gallery to use this items property. So we can click on the gallery, go to its items property in the properties panel, change that to point to our component name. So our component name in this case is just component 1. We can type in component 1, do a dot, and we can point it to that items property. So whatever in that items property of the component itself will then be populated here in the gallery. If you notice though, the progress bar was going horizontally across the screen instead of vertically like we see right now in the component. So what we need to do is adjust the wrap count property of our gallery to handle that. Instead of changing that manually here, say to 2, to make that show 2 columns, I'm going to do this dynamically. I'm going to click on the gallery itself, and in the properties drop-down, I'm going to find that same wrap count property. Rather than hard coding it though, what I'm going to do is use a function called count rows. I'm going to pass it in my items from the component, and this will dynamically get, as you can see, it's saying 4, the number of items that are in that component, so that's how many rows it will span. Another quick tip for formatting is the positioning of these items. So if I want this label to always be right next and beside this circle, I can set the X coordinate of this according to whatever the position of this circle is by clicking on the object selecting the X property from the Properties pane, and then typing in the name of the object you want it to be next to. So in this case, it's circle 3. Getting its X coordinate, then doing a plus and adding in the width. So it'll get the full width that that object takes. And now we can just apply some padding. So if I want that to be to the right of the circle and add, say, 10 pixels of padding, by using this formula, it'll always ensure that that stays in that same X position. So now this is looking pretty close already to what we had in the demo of the progress bar. The only other thing I did, if we look at the live progress bar component now, is I put a rectangle control that's just under the gallery so that it has this nice background effect. Now if we take a look at this finished component, there's a few other things that we need to do from a functionality standpoint to get this progress bar to function properly. Because we need to be able to tell which item we are in the progress bar and if it's been completed to adjust these colors like we're seeing. Let's take a look at how we did that. If you notice on this finished version of the progress bar, I have a few additional custom properties that I'm using. In addition to the items property, I have a colors and an active step input property. Active step is an important property because that's what's going to determine how the component can tell which step is the current active one so that I can fill in the color correctly. Right now I have that hard-coded to 2, and this is going to correlate, if you recall, in the items property with the IDs that we have of our different progress bar items. Colors, let's take a look at that custom property. I'm hard-coding a few colors within here for what the color should be of the circle if it's active, if it's still needs to be done, and if it's done. And the same thing for the labels and the border color. We're going to use these in a formula in the gallery. So taking a look at the gallery now, and specifically the circle icon, this is where we're going to be able to dynamically fill in the color based off if the item is selected or not. So if we look at the fill property of this circle, you see we're using the color value function to specify a color, and then within that we have this if statement. So what we're doing is we're comparing the ID of the item in the gallery, and we're saying if it's greater than our progress bar's active step, then that is the still needs to be done state. So that should be, in the case of my color mapping, gray. But if it's equal to the active step, then I want that to be my active color, which right now I have set to yellow. And if it's less than the active step value, then I know it's done, so I want that to be green. And then I'm just setting a default of gray if it doesn't meet any of those conditions. And you'll notice we have a check mark icon in here as well. So if we take a look at the visible property of that, you see we're also comparing the ID of the current item with that active step value. And if it's less than the active step, that means it's been complete. So I want the check mark to show true, otherwise false. That's really all that there is to this from the component standpoint. So once you build this out, to add it into your individual screens, you'll just go to Insert, Custom, and find that component that you just created. And that will add that onto the screen for you. So from here, you can just configure the individual properties. So if you click on your progress bar component within your screens, you can, for example, set the active step. So I know this is my info screen, so the active step for this screen will be 1. But if we look at my contact screen, for example, the active step for this one will be the second item in the list. So you just repeat that depending on where you have the progress bar and what screen you have it on in your application. So there you have it. This was just a very simple use case of a standard horizontal progress bar that you can get started using in your PowerApps. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.